Allow me to extend a warm welcome to all the viewers on the internet and around the world. It is sunrise on YouTube, morning on Facebook, noon on Twitter, midday on Threads, afternoon on Twitch, sunset on Instagram, and evening on Rumble. I am your host, the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, and the master of the deceptive arts. We are broadcasting live directly from the sanctum of solitude and the citadel at the end of time. Good evening, everyone. I'm the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, the master of the deceptive arts, and the voice of the vasectomites. And today, I thought we could discuss the ever-evolving issue of male health science or bachelor health science, in particular as it relates to bachelors and vasectomites. This is important to us because it is through the wonders and the advances in the health sciences that all vasectomites emerge and all bachelors can evolve to being a vasectomite. The technology that is available to us today would have quite frankly been considered science fiction a generation or two ago. And a few generations before that, it would have been considered witchcraft, unnatural, and by some even supernatural. But through these great technological advances and even better human knowledge and understanding, we now have the power to control even our own evolution and grow past the limitations, boundaries, and shackles imposed on us at birth and free ourselves from the inevitable doom of paternity and the biological imperative, and of course, the worst condition of all, familial obligation. Today, we are going to discuss the first steps in your liberation, and that is to freeze your sperm. I would actually consider this the first phase in our two-phase approach. The first phase is to freeze your sperm, and then once you've frozen that sperm, then you can go ahead and get your vasectomy. Because getting a vasectomy is in fact the last phase of your transformation to go from bachelor to being a full-blown vasectomite. Now, as a lifelong bachelor myself, I will tell you that all the books, the journals, the descriptions, the depictions of the bachelor life and of what bachelors are and can be are all, quite frankly, philosophical. They are theoretical and hypothetical. The philosophies around a bachelor's life are as limited in their effectiveness as the fortitude of the bachelor who practices those philosophies and embraces those ideals, which quite frankly isn't saying very much. Right? It really depends on the individual, which is not a standard. Right? If each individual can have their own approach to the bachelor life, which is what it's about in earnest, having your own approach and doing your own thing. But indeed, we do need to have a standard as bachelors, one that is not philosophical, theoretical, and hypothetical, a standard that is practical, and not just in ideology, but in use. The philosophies around a bachelor's life are in themselves useful in getting you to think in the right way and to try and get you to act in the right way. However, reality does not work according to your philosophies, your beliefs, and your ideas, nor does it work according to mine. Reality only responds to one power and one power only, and that is action. You need to take an action to solidify that bachelor life. It's one thing to have the beliefs, but it's another to follow through with your actions. You may believe that your understanding of bachelor philosophy is unrivaled, and quite frankly, it may very well be. You may very well know the ins and outs of the entire bachelor life, but I would wager all of that knowledge, all of that information, all of that wisdom against a pregnancy. And I would wager that one pregnancy will undo all your theories and all your hypotheses and all your philosophies in a single instant. Can you imagine declaring yourself a bachelor for life? Triumphantly declaring that you are done with the shenanigans of the counterpart and all of their madness. Just for them to turn around and tell you that no, you are not done. You have only just scratched the surface. And now you are going to be in the misery of paternity for the rest of your life. She tells you that she's pregnant. And I always say, just imagine somebody telling you that your last day of freedom was yesterday. And how would that make you feel? And no matter how you feel, just realize there would be nothing that you could do to change that. As soon as a counterpart says that you've inseminated her and she's pregnant with your child, that's it. That's it. And nobody's going to come to your defense. Just know that, right? Nobody's going to come and say, well, you made a mistake, we can overlook it. Nobody's going to say that at all. They're all going to say it's time for you to take care of your responsibilities. For this reason, in order to be a bachelor, you must lose that which you love. An everlasting exchange, a child and a wife for a life. This is the sacrifice that you must make in order to live successfully in the solitude. However, the word sacrifice doesn't necessarily mean loss. Sacrifice means giving up something small in order to get something larger and more significant soon thereafter. So the sacrifice that you make when you give up this life of protecting and providing, this life of it takes a village, this life of happy spouse, happy house, all of that, right? These guys bring a child to work, that kind of thing. You need to let go of all those things. Dads and lads, father son sports days. You need to let go of all that. We don't need all that, right? This is the sacrifice that you must make in order to live in the solitude, right? You must choose a life rather than the commitments, the familial obligations that come with paternity. This is your salvation. This is the way, right, that you secure your bachelor life. But this statement that says you must lose that which you love, you need to give that section of that phrase some thought. You need to meditate on that and realize that those are the things that are going to bind you ultimately, right? And for a small sacrifice of freezing your sperm and getting a vasectomy, it's a small financial cost and a small amount of time in recovery, right? For this small vasectomy, you get the great gift of freedom, liberation, and the true power of self determination. However, it must be mentioned that while a vasectomy can happen fairly quickly, because it's an in and out procedure in your doctor's on the same day, right, or in the clinic or in the operating room, in and out, same day, right? Freezing your sperm, on the other hand, can take some time to do, right? It can require a fair bit of investment in time, right? But when you do, right, when you do, the thought that I don't want to let go of in my mind is that you give yourself peace of mind, right? The bachelor life is about having all of your options open to you, right? So you still maintain all of your, I'm speaking now after the vasectomy, you will still maintain all of your functions as usual. You are still creating, actually, you are still creating sperm inside of you, which means you still have the same levels of testosterone, you still have the same levels of desire, you still have the same functionality, you still have the same mechanisms creating those sperms. All you do is you just think of it like if there was a bridge, the sperm have to cross that bridge. All you do is you prevent them from crossing that bridge, right? You don't actually destroy the bridge, you just collapse it at one point so the sperm goes, and in fact you just block it, right? That's what you do. You don't even collapse the bridge. You just block the bridge so that the sperm cannot go through, right? That's it. But it's still there. And then eventually it ages and dies out, and new sperm will therefore be made, right? But the reason for you freezing your sperm first is so that you still have the options of all of the options that are offered by biology. So physically, you don't harm yourself, but for some men, the thought that you may never create another child again, especially if you don't have children, that can be quite a daunting thought, right? Especially if you haven't got any kids yourself. So freezing your sperm really gives you all of those options, and this is something that's worth mentioning and keeping in your mind. It also is going to dissuade you, and let me rather say dissuade your fears, right? It's going to alleviate some of those concerns and some of those fears. So what you have, on the one hand, you still have the ability to create children, but on the other hand, you are still protected from insidious counterparts, unscrupulous counterparts, right? Which gives us, quite frankly, a victory that is complete, right? We have, one hand, the ability to defend ourselves. On the other hand, we have the ability to defeat any enemy that might come for us with any types of insidious attacks. This is a complete victory, right? You have all your options of biology, and you are protected from your own biology. This is evolution. This is evolution. This is us rising to the next step. We now not only have, for the first time, this combination of moves. But this combination allows us to evolve past the limits of our biology. This is the real next step in male evolution. It's really not going to be things like TRT, fitness, steroids, whatever those things are. Because all those things do is enhance your biology. They don't change your biology. They don't change the way you would otherwise have functioned, at least not biologically. Freezing your sperm and getting a vasectomy is the next step in human evolution because it literally changes biology and gives you full control on how to maneuver, how to enact that biology, right? This is really the next step in male evolution, right? And knowing this, right? Knowing this for me, it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time, right? It's a very exciting time. I cannot wait to see how men will behave and act and how much their ambitions will grow once they've frozen their sperm and got a vasectomy and then can function without limitations, right? Without having to worry about consequences of making silly mistakes, being able to act with absolute confidence. It's really going to be an exciting time when the vasectomites come to earth, all right? But before we can do that, there are a few things to consider, and we will discuss a few of them today in today's reading material and in today's edification. So as you go to freeze your sperm, there's a few things that you may want to know while you are doing your research, and we'll discuss some of them here. This is quite frankly some futuristic science stuff, right? It's becoming quite normal, but it's really that futuristic science stuff. They used to make movies about these kind of things decades ago, right? Decades ago. And now that we are here and we can utilize this for ourselves is very exciting. It's a very exciting time, right? But on that notion of time, time is always of the essence, right? Time is really what it's all about. Having it, using it, and then growing it, trying to extend the amount of time that you will have. Because once you've done this, and we're going to talk about the timing of freezing your sperm, because that's a very important thing to know. But once you've done this, and you've frozen your sperm and you've gotten your vasectomy, and you start to look inward into yourself, you start to realize how fast time can really go, since you know yours is the end, right? You're not living for somebody else, and you look at your own time. The benders are always living for somebody else. They are always trying to honor somebody else with their presence and with their labor and their effort. But for us, we look inward. And one of the things that you might want to look into is your health in order to extend your amount of time that you live here on this earth. Because you really don't want nothing less than 100 years of meaningful life. And when you get to 100, you want to be standing on your own 2 feet and still have your own thoughts be your own. So you do want to, take care of that and take care of yourself so you can extend your time. Really, time is going to be the most important thing for you. And what you're going to do is, I hope you're going to on the one hand, you're gonna really explore the limits of what is possible, but on the other hand, I'm hoping that you'll do so in a healthy and safe way. So it's one thing to go out at night, and it's another thing to go out all night and drink alcohol, tremendous amounts of alcohol, because now you're decreasing the quality of your rest along with, inducing something that, quite frankly, could diminish the quality of your life in a serious way. So you have to move more tactfully in terms of health, right? And I'm not just saying that for you, I'm saying that for myself, because it's always in the back of my mind. Can I get healthier in order to live longer? That's really what it's about, right? And myself, 100 years, 100 years is, I'm trying to make that a minimum. I'd happily take 110. I'd happily take 100 good years and 10 miserable years after that, just suffering through. But as long as I live long, that's really what it's about. I'd rather live long and suffer than have a short, bright life. I don't see the point of that, right? But let's talk more about this issue of time. Now, when it comes to freezing sperm, right? And we're going to revisit this again in a different issue, right? In terms of how much time do you get when you freeze your sperm? Because it really comes down to time and timing, right? So the first element of time we want to discuss is, depending on how much sperm you want to freeze, you will have to make time for those deposits, right? So, well, let's start from the beginning. The average male releases around 100 to 150 million sperm every time he climaxes. So that's about 100 to 150 million. Some more, some less, depending on the circumstances, right? But this is around average. So if you want to save a billion sperm, which is what I did, I saved up a billion sperm. You might need somewhere around 8 to 10 deposits, right? So somewhere around 8 to 10 deposit will give you about a billion sperm at 150, at 100 million to 150 million sperm. So you're talking about 8 to 10 deposits. Now, generally, what the fertility clinic will want is, they'll want you to abstain from intimacy for 4 days. So any kind of intimate acts for 4 days. So they want you really full, so they can get as much good quality sperm out of you, right? So they'll want you to abstain from intimacy for about 4 days before you can make a deposit, right? Which can mean it can take you roughly 2 months to get a billion sperm. Now, you don't need to go all the way to a billion, right? You could do it. You could do about maybe 500,000, half a billion, in maybe 16 days, something to that effect, right? 16 to maybe, let's say about 20 days, right? Let's say about 20 days. Remember, they don't open on weekends, right? So whatever you're thinking, 20 days, that means you're only really getting about one, because they're closed on weekends. If they were open on weekends, you'd be able to go in whenever you want. So you really have to be calculated about it, right? So you might be able to do one on Monday and then another one Thursday, Friday. Really depends. And also, if you got work, right, you can't just be going anytime you want. So it really took some time for me to get the time, the timing, and the volume and the number of things that I wanted. It took me about 2 months to get this done, right? And once I did, I mean, it was fantastic, right? As soon as I did, the following week, I went ahead and got my vasectomy. My urologist had been waiting. He'd been waiting weeks and weeks for me to get ready. But once I was ready, we went ahead and did it. And that vasectomy was in and out. It took me much longer to freeze the sperm than it did to get a vasectomy. And this is something that I want you to keep in the back of your mind, right? So it's one thing to get the vasectomy. It's a completely different set of moves to freeze the sperm. That's why I say it's in two phases, right? It's two phases. Phase one, you freeze your sperm, but again, you don't have to do a billion, right? And you don't have to take as long as I did. You could, I mean, there's a way that I mean, even 200 million is plenty. 200 million, you're not having 200 million kids, you know. So it's plenty. Just do what works for you, right? That being said, it's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun and quite satisfying in numerous ways. Um, you know, yeah, you do take matters into your own hands, but the people at the clinic, they will accommodate you. They'll really accommodate you in surprising ways, right? So it also, there is a little bit of embarrassment that goes that goes along with it. So I mean, you walk out of the room quite relaxed. Really, you walk out of there quite relaxed every time. You go in there a little bit tense, but you walk out very relaxed. And but now everybody knows what you've just done, so it's a little bit embarrassing, you know. But the staff, they're very professional, very helpful, and I'm sure they've seen it all before, right? So consider all your options and do as much research as you can before you start the process of freezing your sperm. But once once you freeze your sperm and get that vasectomy, you should have all your options open to you, and you should have peace of mind, and you should know that it is really, for me, I consider it the next step in male evolution, in bachelor evolution, right? And also, I'm glad to say this is my contribution to the bachelor philosophy, right? The move is to freeze your sperm and get a vasectomy, right? Others will preach abstinence, which is a legitimate option. Others will preach different philosophies, personal growth, personal lifestyle, inward looking philosophies, all kinds of things. Here, I'm saying freeze your sperm, get a vasectomy, right? And despite all of those philosophies, this will give you peace of mind. I guarantee you peace of mind, and you will only get peace of mind from knowing that you are safe. You will only get peace of mind from knowing that you are safe. And true confidence, I always say, comes from preparation. Preparation means knowing what is going to happen. You cannot be intimate with a counterpart and then hope she doesn't get pregnant, because she will, right? And no matter what you say, you have confidence. No matter what you can say, you have skills, you have game, whatever that word really means. Whatever you have, it's all gone the minute she says she's pregnant, right? The minute she says, oh, guess what, you're going to be a dad. All those philosophies are going to mean very little, right? But our philosophy here as vasectomites is you got to freeze your sperm, you got to get your vasectomy, right? And today we're going to look at what actually is sperm freezing, and what you can expect, other than a glorious time in and out of that fertility clinic, just having a blast. You'll be surprised at what kind of material they've got in those back rooms, all kinds of things that you can utilize. But yeah, so let's have a look at what you can expect when you are freezing your sperm. Sperm cryopreservation. That's really what it's called. Sperm cryopreservation, commonly known as sperm freezing. This is what we're talking about today. The information, these excerpts come from the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. It says on the website, review date 15 April 2027. This could imply that it is in fact knowledge given to us by the future, which is very uncommon and very unlikely, or it may very well indicate that the next review of this information will occur April 15, 2027. So we know that little to no information ever comes from the future. So if this information came from the future, it's quite troubling. And the last accreditation is that their website is www.hfea.gov.uk. Sadly, there was no author. Yeah, you don't get writers sending information from the future. It reads, what is sperm freezing, right? The first important question. From sperm freezing, also known as sperm cryopreservation, right? This is the futuristic stuff we're talking about, is a process where semen samples are collected, analyzed, and then frozen for long-term storage and future use in assisted reproductive technologies like IVF and IUI. Close parenthesis. I beg your pardon, this is in parenthesis, so open parenthesis and close parenthesis, right? So, very simple. Sperm is collected, analyzed for various things: health, deformity, and STIs, right? Any type of ailments and illnesses of that nature, right? And then it's stored long term, and we're going to see just how long, right? We're talking about time here. So we're going to see just how long it is stored, also to be used in IVF and UIE. This means that you will not be able to have children the traditional way, right? Through, your own doing. You're going, if you do decide, and maybe we'll talk about that later, but IVF and IUE are your only options, right? Which are extremely expensive. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. But under the right circumstances, they could work. They could work if you have a surrogate in that kind of situation. Who can say, right? I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend that you volunteer for paternity and fatherhood. Just gonna ruin your own life. It continues here, saying that men are able to freeze their sperm for use in their own future treatment, or to donate to someone else's treatment. So if somebody wants a child that looks kind of sort of like you can go ahead and do that, but make sure that that contract is stiff and that you are not held liable for anything. Because as soon as they realize how much it costs to raise these kids, they're going to come knocking on your door. It says donated sperm usually has to be quarantined for 3 or 6 months and screened for infections, right, before it can be used by a recipient. The length of quarantine is dependent upon the type of screening test that your clinic carries out. So there you have it, right? I did a full panel. I did a full STD panel. Fortunately, I was negative on all accounts, but I generally have to do that for work anyway. So I try to avoid any of those types of risks as far as I can, right? Because I know it might affect more than just my health, right? So yes, what you don't want to do in all seriousness, is you don't want to freeze sperm or any material from you that is infected with STDs and STIs, only to put that into somebody else and then infect them and have a child, and now a counterpart that is also infected with, sometimes incurable STIs. That's just the worst case scenario. So you really don't want to. You really don't want to do that. The next part is sperm freezing right for me? Yes, it is. You may want to consider freezing your sperm if, number one, you have a condition or are facing medical treatment for a condition that may affect your fertility. I believe cancer could be one of those situations. Certain types of cancer treatments can affect your fertility. So you might want to, if you are unfortunately suffering from cancer, you may want to do that before you start your treatment, especially things like radiation. But speak to your oncologist about this information, right? But if you're facing a medical condition and you're not certain about how maybe the treatment for that condition may affect your fertility, you want to go ahead and take that precaution. You are about to have a vasectomy. Number two, this is for us, and one sperm available in case you change your mind about having or having more children. So usually, what the way they advertise vasectomies is for men who already have children and don't want to have any more children. But if you're like me and you don't want to have any kids at all, at least to have them in the traditional way, or to have them in a way that you are not planning or prepared for, you want to go ahead and freeze your sperm. So number two is absolutely for us, the vasectomites. Three, you have low sperm count or quality of your sperm is deteriorating. So as you grow older, your sperm count does decrease, as well as the health and quality of your sperm. I believe it's a marginal decline, but I cannot say. But I know that the older you get, the worse your sperm is. This is known all the way up to your 70s and your 80s, right? So one of the benefits of freezing your sperm, when you're at least younger, right? So the younger you are, the healthier your sperm, right? You get to freeze the healthiest possible sperm that you have. So as you grow older, your sperm quality will decrease, but you will still have the sperm of your 20s or 30s, or whenever you decided to have your vasectomy. That sperm will remain there, young and healthy, right, while you get older. So, that's one of the benefits. Four, you have difficulty producing a sperm sample on the day of fertility treatment. So, on the day of treatment, right? So if you're doing IVF or IUI, I'm not actually sure what IUI stands for. I know IVF, in vitro fertilization. IUI, I'm not really sure what that stands for, right? But if on the day you produce a sample that is insufficient, usually this would be because you've had intimacy before. Like you had intimacy yesterday or 2 days ago that night, but fairly recently. And so you produce a sample that is not sufficient, right? They may then go into a sample that you have produced prior, right? That you've frozen prior. That might actually work. If in fact you want to keep your sperm for this purpose, right, for the use of IVF later, then it won't really matter what your sample is on the day, right? Then because you already have it set up. Five, you are at risk of injury or death. For example, you're a member of armed forces who is being deployed to a war zone. I never actually thought of that. So if you're somebody who, works a dangerous job and you're not certain that you will survive or pull this off, But you may still want the option of leaving a biological legacy on Earth. You may consider freezing your sperm and letting it be deployed after you've been deployed. Who knows? All right, it's a viable option for military men, and then you can get a vasectomy, right? So you can go into your duties with absolute confidence, knowing that your seed is secure as well as you, right? So for military men, it's worth considering this for yourself in a serious way. And then lastly, six, if you're a male transitioning to a female, I'm not, you may want to preserve your fertility before you start hormone therapy or have reconstructive surgery. For both treatments can lead to partial or total loss of your fertility. So, I'm not really into the transitioning, right? It's not. I'm not for or against anything. I don't really care. I'm an independent. Do whatever you want to do, right? Do whatever you want to do. Me, I'm an independent. So I'm all about preserving myself, and I encourage men to preserve themselves. Politically, just be an independent. Let people do what they want to do and face their own consequences, right? You want to play these types of games? Go ahead and play those types of games. Here we are. We're playing with our own evolution too. We're talking about taking it to that next level in terms of science and evolution for men. So last person, I'm the last person to judge you for trying to do what is different from nature's design, because here we are doing something that is completely different from nature's design, and we are evolving the whole situation. So it's up to you. Do whatever you want. I'm not picky. I don't really care, to be honest with you. And I'm not even being dismissive. Like, I'm not saying I care because I'm being dismissive. I care as much about this issue as I do about those damn knee benders, which is not at all. I'm not wasting my time on knee benders or this situation. You know what I mean? However, it is useful to note that it says here you may want to preserve your fertility before you start hormone therapy or have reconstructive surgery. This part here with the hormone therapy. Hormone therapy can take many different forms from my limited understanding of it, and can have many different effects. So, if you are going to be engaging in any type of serious hormone therapy, reconstructive surgery, I'm also aware that that could mean anything from, skincare to anything, really. So, before taking any type of advanced hormone therapy, cancer treatment like chemotherapy or radiation, that kind of thing. Things that, quite frankly, I'm not really familiar about. Speak to your doctor about this and then find out, is protecting your fertility in this way, freezing your sperm in this way, is it something that you want to consider? I think every man should consider it, regardless of your circumstances. I think you should consider it just in case anything could happen to you, right? If you are unsure about having kids, if you are unsure about having a vasectomy, if you are unsure about surviving a treatment or surviving deployment, right? This is a viable option for you. This is a legitimate and viable option. And looking at these six reasons here, I think all of them are legitimate, right? I think all those from hormone therapy, reconstructive surgery, to the fear of deployment, to medical conditions, to conditions that you may have inherited, right? All these reasons are legitimate reasons why you may want to freeze your sperm, right? So, is it right for you? I would say absolutely yes. So, how does sperm freezing work? Firstly, you'll need to be tested for any infectious diseases like HIV and hepatitis. Yes, you do need to get tested. Like I said, I went and had a full panel, right? So, whatever it is, it was a long list of things, and I was able to use that for freezing my sperm as well as for work related issues. So I was happy to get that full panel and submit that. But also, I kind of knew that I didn't have any problems. So, people who don't have any STDs like to show off the fact that they don't have any STDs by doing what I did, just doing a full panel just to show how healthy I am. It's helpful, but also a little bit spiteful at the same time. Let's continue. It says this has no bearing on whether you can freeze your sperm or not, but is to ensure that affected sperm samples are stored separately to prevent contamination or of other samples. There you go. The example that I gave previously was that you just don't want to infect somebody else with your whatever it is you have, right, with your STI. So I wouldn't freeze sperm that is infected already. However, they won't stop you from doing it, right? They won't stop you from freezing your sperm. You can freeze anything that you want actually in terms of your own material, right? So they won't prevent you, but it says here very clearly what they'll do it is store it separately, and perhaps in a different way, to prevent it contaminating other samples, which is a good peace of mind, right? You'll then need to give your written informed consent to your sperm being stored and specify how long you want it to be stored for, right? So we're going to talk about that in the next little reading. So yes, you do need to give written consents. They've got all kinds of contracts that you do, and then you pay. I believe it's about $50, but I will come back to that, right? Yes, you do need to sign a written consent, right? You do need to give them permission to store your material, but then they'll also want to hold you accountable for the payment and that kind of thing, right? I can tell you that my payment is about $50 a year, right? It's the equivalent of about $50 a year. So I don't think you'll pay more than $100 a year, which is like less than $10 a month. It's really not that expensive, right? At the clinic, you'll be asked to produce a fresh sample of sperm if you're able, which will be mixed with a special fluid, a cryoprotectant. Listen to those advanced scientific words. This is where we are. We're evolving, right? New vocabulary, cryoprotectant, right? What do they call it? They call it cryopreservation. This is part of our new vocabulary now. Cryopreservation, right? We have to update our synapses along with new and updated information. So they're going to put a cryoprotectant to protect the sperm from damage during freezing. So you do have to give a sample for them to test before you can start the storage. So it's actually quite a long process. So you need to do your tests, your full panel. Then you have to come in and give them a sample for them to test. And only once they've tested the sample, because they actually need to know you have sperm, right? They need to know you actually have sperm. So once you've tested that, then they can save, right? But what happens is they give you the readout, and only a urologist can confirm that this is good. So you have to then take that readout. So they take your sample, they give you a readout, right, on a piece of paper. It's I think it was like a 2 or 3 page document. You then take that document to your urologist. He will read through it and explain to you what it is that's going on here. My urologist just said, "Oh, you have plenty. What do you want to do?" And then we sat down and discussed the vasectomy and all kinds of things. So yes, then you have to go back and then 4 days later and then start giving them your samples, right? So you can see how, I mean, it took for the full panel of STI tests, I had to wait like 2 or 3 days. Then I had to do, the first sample, right? Which I was delayed because I had had intimacy previously. So I had to then go back and wait 4 days to give that sample, then take that sample to the urologist, and then wait 4 days again to then start. So it was about 2 weeks before I even started to save the sample, right? So this is an important thing to know, right? And then only about maybe a week and a half later, it took some time before I could even start saving, right? And then I started saving the sperm. Before freezing, the sperm sample is usually divided between a number of containers called straws. This means that not all sperm needs to be thawed at once and can be used in multiple treatments. The samples are then cooled slowly and plunged into liquid nitrogen. Listen to how cool that sounds. Now we're using cryoprotectants and liquid nitrogen. This is really the stuff that we need in our lives as bachelors. So yes, what they'll do is they'll keep your stuff in straws. Now just imagine this high-tech lab, right? This is what I imagine in my life, in my mind. Some high-tech, sophisticated lab. Now they've got your stuff all in straws. And anytime that you want to use it, they got to take it out the straw and then dip it into liquid nitrogen, bringing your sperm back to life as if nothing had happened. Right? How fantastic is that? That sounds like real evolution. Doesn't this sound like real evolution? And also, now that that sperm is doing that, you who's gotten a vasectomy are liberated, truly liberated. You've not only changed your psychology, you've literally changed your biology. You have achieved, you have achieved the height of humanity. You have evolved. This is the peak of humanity, evolution. So, the question of time visits us once again. How long can my sperm be stored for use in treatment? If your sperm are not used immediately in treatment, you may wish to store your sperm so they can be used for treatment in the future. This is correct. So if you're not using it right now, you want to use it again in the future. To be stored, sperm are frozen. Yes, right? We know this. You will need to think about how far in the future you might want to be able to use stored sperm and the potential cost of storing, right? So think of the future. This is where we are headed, right? It's an issue of time, right? Where are we headed? We are traveling through time. We are going to the future. And how are you going to be when you arrive at that future, right? And you must realize that your sperm is going to be frozen in time. It's going to remain frozen in time. So while you're traveling through time and you get to that future destination that you think you're going to be, right, your sperm will still be as young as ever, fresh as ever, right? So you could be in 2050, 2056, and still be able to have children that should have been born in 2026, right? Regardless of what happens in the future in terms of food and health and general society. Just think about how intertwined this question of time and timing is, right? So now we're not just working with the elements of evolution. We are bending time to our will, slowly, carefully working towards our final destination, right? The rise of the vasectomites. Let's continue, right? Um, Potential cost of storing. Yes, this is something you should discuss with your clinic. So I'm going to assume that different clinics have different prices, right? Which is why I put it at around $50 to $100. Um, my $50 I don't think was on the cheap end. I think I really could have gotten a lower price. Um, and I also think I could have gotten a slightly higher price, right? So I think 50 was right around the middle. Say 50 to about $75 was right around there. So you could put aside $100 a year, and that would be a reasonable expectations. Yeah, I don't think it'll cost you a full $100, right? But talk to your clinic. Let's continue. On 1st July 2022, the rules on how long you can store eggs, sperm, or embryos changed. Before the 1st of July 2022, most people could usually only store their embryos for up to 10 years, only if they had permanent infertility or were going to be having medical treatment which could affect their fertility. Could they store up to 55 years? So, what they're saying is for the general public, they would allow you to store your material for 10 years, right? They say eggs, sperm, and embryos could be stored for 10 years, right? And only under the conditions where you had a medical situation, so you were going treatment or you had a medical condition, that sort of situation, they would allow you to store it for up to 55 years. Think of that potential. We're talking now 55 years into the future. This is a lifetime. You're able to store everything for a lifetime. 55 years you can store your material for that long. That's an incredible amount of time. That's a tremendous benefit. Of course, now you have to do the budget for that. So that's about, if you're looking at $100, that's about $5,500, 5,500 US dollars, which is not bad over a lifetime. That's not bad. The law now permits you to store eggs, sperm, and embryos for use in treatment for any period up to a maximum of 55 years from the date that the embryos are placed in storage. This is tremendous news for us. This is tremendous news for us. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? So the law now permits and allows you to store your material for 55 years. 55 years. This is a lifetime, man. This is fantastic. This is exactly what we need. This is exactly what we wanted. All of the advantages. And you understand the vasectomy is for life, and so is your sperm. If you get this frozen in your 20s, let's say you're 25 plus 55 years, you'll be 80 by the time you need this, right? And you can access it anytime that you want, as many times as you want, because they have it in different stores, different compartments. So you can go ahead and take some and use them, come back later, take some and use them. I have 1 billion of them. So I know I have unlimited options, right? And now knowing that I could keep it going for 55 years. And in fact, it's possible to go even longer than that in my imagination. As the technology improves, I'm certain we could go longer than that. But I cannot see why you would store it for 55 years, but you can't store it for 60, right? I think it's really a matter of the law, but I also think that it's possible to store for much longer than 55 years. But as of 2022, you have 55 glorious years with which to utilize the sperm. Isn't this the advantage, quite frankly, that you've been looking for? Right? This is the advantage that I'm talking about, an evolutionary advantage. right? This is the process that we've been waiting for as bachelors and vasectomites, and I think as men in general. And I think if men hear this good news, even men who want to bend the knee will consider this as a viable strategy, because you can still bend that knee and still have kids and still have all of your options open to you. You can get a vasectomy, you can freeze your sperm, and you can bend the knee, and you can still have kids. Right? So there's no reason why every man cannot benefit from this incredible evolutionary technology that we have at our fingertips. How much control do I have over what happens to my sperm? You'll find that you have a tremendous amount of control over what happens to your sperm, and they'll describe that here. It says you'll need to complete consent forms before you start treatment, specifying how you want your sperm to be used, of course. This includes information on how long you want your sperm to be stored. You can store your sperm for up to 55 years if you renew your consent to storage every 10 years, right? I'm not sure if this means every 10 years you have to come and sign that contract again, or you can sign it once for 55 years. But I believe what they're saying is every 10 years that contract lapses. So you need to sign a new contract every 10 years. That new contract is probably going to have like a new signing on fee and all kinds of things, right? So you're going to have to do that all over again. Yes, there is a signing and admin fee. There's always a signing and an admin fee. So over and above that $55, you probably have to sign a new admin and signing fee. And when you renew, they'll probably give you a different price as well, but it won't be much. It won't be much. So the second one, what should happen to your sperm if you were to die or become unable to make decisions for yourself? They give you several options for this, right? And then they give you an empty spot at the bottom. I just said donate it to a woman who was of childbearing age. That's really what I said. But you know, you can say whatever you want. You can say destroy it if that's your choice, right? But they do give you some realistic options, right? Donate was was one of those options, and I chose that. In my next one, when I renew my contract, I'm probably going to say they can donate it to science. I'm going to probably say they can donate it to a donor or donate it to science for research, should I no longer be able to utilize it. Three, whether the sperm are to be used for your own treatment only, or whether they can be donated for someone else's treatment or used for research training. Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. So they'll give you these options, right? So they'll say, this is only for me, but are you okay with donating it to somebody else's treatment? Should you not be able to utilize or not want to utilize it for yourself? Or should you stop paying? Right? Should you stop paying for the storage? Then you can give them these options, or use for research or training. Chances are they'll just donate it and keep it in a bank of people who want to buy. They'll probably just use it for research and donation and all kinds of things, right? It's their material now. It's their DNA. They can do whatever they want. If should you lapse your contract or not pay, right? You do have to pay. You do have to pay, guys. Number four, any other conditions you may have for the use of sperm. So there you can specify what you want and what your intentions are. You can vary or withdraw consent at any time, either before treatment or before the sperm are used in research or training. If this happens, your sperm will not be used, very clearly, right? So you have control. And even if you agree on something, and you can always change your mind and say, no, I don't want my sperm to be used used in somebody else's treatment. I don't want my sperm to be used for research, or any one of those options. So you'll find that you have a tremendous amount of control, and I think they will honor the contract, as well as they will honor your wishes. How safe is it? It says it's very safe. I agree, it's very safe, painless. It's actually quite a lot of fun to do. We're not aware of any risk to patients or children from using frozen sperm. Not all sperm will survive the freezing and thawing process, though. This is fair, right? This is also something that I took into consideration by trying to freeze 1 billion sperm. I realized that maybe not all would make the process and not all would be successful. However, I'm confident I have enough. But as for you, there is absolutely no pain. It's nothing but pleasure. It's an absolute breeze. It's a great time. You're gonna have a great time in there, right? It's not every time you get to blow a load in a fertility clinic. It's like coming full circle. No pun intended. How successful is sperm freezing? Treatment with frozen sperm is just as successful as treatment using fresh sperm. So yes, this is true. You know, in fact, this is why you want to freeze your sperm, because as you get older, right, your sperm gets older too, and the quality and quantity decrease and diminish, right? So what that says is that the treatment, so the success of using normal sperm, which comes straight out of the human catalyst, or using the frozen sperm, is exactly the same. So what does that tell you? If you have young sperm that's been frozen, it will be more successful than if you're older with live sperm, right? I don't actually have a term for it, but let's just call it sperm from the person himself, right? So you're better off probably from a health standpoint, the health of your sperm. You're better off freezing that and using the younger, healthier sperm anyway. This is just from my logic. But effectively, all things being equal, it should work just the same, right? You should have no advantage in terms of quality of outcome, especially when it comes to insemination, right? Whether it comes from you directly or from you through IVF and other advancements. Our next question is, what if I don't use all my sperm during my treatment? Right, so what happens if you have 1 billion sperm like me, but you only use 2? What happens to the other 900 million of them? 999 million, and so on. I don't even know if it's 999 million. It is 999 million. Let's continue. If you have frozen sperm that you don't want to use, you have a number of different options. First, donate them to someone else. You may be eligible to donate your sperm to someone else who very much wants a family, or you could sell it. I don't know if you could sell sperm. Is that legal? I don't know. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do that. Find out if you can. But I don't see why not. From a moral standpoint anyway. Donate them to training. I believe this has to do with research. You may have stored sperm that you do not wish to use, for example, because the sperm are not needed or are not suitable for treatment. You can consent to your sperm being used and stored for potential use by designated healthcare professionals to practice their techniques involved in fertility treatment fertility treatment on the relevant HFEA consent form. Right, so this is very interesting. So students can use your sperm for practice. Effectively, that's what they're saying. Right, so you can they can do research on it, or they can use your sperm to practice and improve their fertility skills, which I don't mind. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't want to then, be walking down the street one day and see somebody that looks just like me, sounds just like me, has a bad attitude just like me. I don't need those problems. I don't need those problems. If you give your consent to storing your sperm for training purposes, your clinic may store your sperm for these purposes for up to 55 years from the date that your sperm are first placed in storage. So, yeah, so they can use that for 55 years. So you're talking about, generations of medical students just practicing this art. And if the technology improves, who knows, they may use that in better technology in the future, right? So, you know, if you had a child today and, in 55 years, they would be almost at retirement age, right? Some may not even be with us any longer, God forbid. But knowing that you can store your sperm in 55 years, for 55 years, and then start there, right? This is a great investment in the future, right? This is a great investment. I mean, you can skip an entire generation of problems and go right to the end of time. 55 years, you can go right to the other side. You can skip 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of problems and go right to the other side, assuming that we've hit some kind of peak in humanity. You can afford to wait and see what happens, how the tide turns, all the while amassing a tremendous amount of wealth because you're not spending any money raising kids, right? Or your material can be used for science and study. Really, the options are endless. Really, the options are endless, and we are only just discovering them now. You and I together, right? We are only just scratching the surface of what is possible in terms of science, technology, and our own evolution. Then, okay, so donate them to training is one thing, donate them to research. Okay, I thought these would have come together, but research is a whole nother field compared to training, and I do know this. Yes, research and training are completely different. Research on eggs, sperm, and embryos are invaluable in helping scientists to understand causes of fertility and develop new treatments, right? There you go. Research, invaluable, right? This is what they're telling you. This whole thing is invaluable, and I agree. And then finally, your last option is to dispose of them. Some people prefer to dispose of their sperm. Sperm that are no longer needed are simply removed from the freezer and allowed to perish naturally in warmer temperatures. And that's it. And the sperm, therefore, will die a natural death, right? So this is the final slide. This is really the end of the edification. I found this to be very enlightening, right? Very insightful stuff, very profound. New information is really what is uncovered here. New vocabulary, new techniques, new words, right? Cryopreservation, cryoprotectant. These are things that are not common language, right? This is not common language, and this is now part of our new bank of information that we know is possible for us as bachelors and vasectomites, right? But this is also our next step in evolution as bachelors. This is how we keep growing and we keep getting better by learning more and utilizing more, right? And now we have entered into the age of hyper technology. We've entered into the age of health science, right? These are the bachelor health sciences, and we are evolving ourselves and taking it to the next level. This is really, where I plant my flag, and it is the combination of thousands of years of bachelor philosophy, bachelor economics, bachelor understanding, bachelor spiritualism, and we combine that with modern science and create a new type of bachelor, a vasectomite, with all of the powers of and knowledge of previous bachelors, and then we're taking it one step further. This is really how the bachelor life is going to survive, through evolution, progress, and improvement, where one generation of bachelors is better than the next generation of bachelors, right? And we have to be competitive about this. We cannot all be coming out really with the same message and the same philosophy, right? We need to be able to stand on new messages, new ideas, new technologies, and challenge old previous notions, and then we'll have our synthesis, our antithesis, right? And then we'll come up with a new hypothesis after that. And this is how we improve, right? We have to keep getting better, getting smarter, getting technologically more advanced, and applying those technologies to our own well-being and evolve, right? The ways of old have served us tremendously up until this point, but it's become very clear that these counterparts have learned our ways, mastered them, and have now used them against us. Our own beliefs our own beliefs and our own strengths have been undermined, and we have been forced to evolve. And for centuries and generations, bachelors have struggled with this, and many have ultimately ended up bending the knee, right? Having made a mistake, having gotten a counterpart inseminated, or simply fall into the combination of dangerous drugs that are functioning in your brain, and they call that combination of illicit substances, they call it love. And many men have fallen victim to this and bent the knee, right? Not knowing that just around the corner, true evolution was available at the tips of our hands, with minimal costs and effort. Time is of the essence otherwise, because it's going to take some time for you to get all the sperm that you need, all the treatments, all the tests, right? Not treatments, right? They're going to need to test you. They're going to need to do a full panel. If you're intelligent, you'll do a full panel. Take no chances, right? And then give them their sample, and then come back, give them the 4 days, do it right, get as many as you need, and then get your vasectomy, right? And this is how you secure yourself and preserve yourself, by using not just the technology of today, but also the philosophy of old. And this will give us our new purpose. And once this message is out there, vasectomites will rise on this earth with full advantage, right? All our defenses and all of our strengths, giving us the evolutionary advantage that we need, not just to overcome those who would exploit us, right? Not just to break the chains above all those that would exploit us, right? But also to improve not just ourselves, but to improve our beliefs, to improve our philosophy and our way of life. The bachelor life must evolve. It must improve in a tangible way. And I believe that this combination of moves that we've discussed here, freezing your sperm and getting that vasectomy, that this is the move that we have been waiting for. This is the combination of alchemy that will give us the new type of bachelor, the vasectomites. And I'm proud to be here today as the voice of the vasectomites. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. This is the end of the video, and I always appreciate you giving me that time and your ear. Have a lovely day.